Hi folks, Charlie Shelton here, Zippity-Doo-Dad, back once again to talk about Halloween Horror Nights. It opened last night. I was an opening night of Halloween Horror Nights. It was hot. Getting out of the car, the temperature read 116 degrees, and it was hot. So I know that kind of shifted things around, but I still got to see everything, and we're going to talk about the specifics of each house. Now, let me give a warning right now. If you don't want spoilers of this event, you can jump down to this time code, and that will be the end of the video, and you can hear a spoiler-free overall review of the event as a whole. Now, if you're still here, if you haven't jumped down to that time placement, I'm going to assume you want some spoilers. So let's take a look at some of the best stuff at Halloween Horror Nights. So Universal brought me out and gave me a media pass to go through, and we got Universal Express to see all of the mazes. The only way to see everything, I think, is with a Universal Express pass. If you go on any given night, you're going to be waiting in long lines, and because it was so hot this year, the lines were considerably shorter than I was expecting, so that definitely worked in the favor of some of the general admission guests. But for the most part, if you want to see everything, these lines get long, 90 minutes, 2 hours, sometimes upwards of there. So if you really want to make sure that you see all these houses, you got to go Universal Express. It's really the only way to play. But if you're going general admission, you can still hit a few of your favorites, and that's what this guide is about, is to help you pick which houses are going to be the best ones and which ones to skip. And also, if you're considering, you know, Knott's versus Universal versus Six Flags versus Legoland, I'm going to be doing other videos later on as these events open one after another, comparing them back and forth. So if you need help deciding where to spend your Halloween dollars, I'll also have that. So let's jump into the mazes. First up, the Weekend Nightmare Trilogy. They had a weekend house last year, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I don't really know a lot about the Weekend, and so maybe that's it, but also just it seems that some of the gags and set pieces weren't as elaborate. This one had a really elaborate frontispiece, you know, facade to enter through, but inside it just wasn't spectacular. There were some mirror rooms that were cool, but like there was nothing that really wowed me, and there were no really spectacular kills, and that's always what I'm all about, is the cool gags. So this one, to be honest, is a pass for me. It was one of the weaker houses. Next up, A Quiet Place. This is based on the film franchise, not just the Quiet Place Day One that just came out, but like scenes from all of them. And this was cool. It was nice that there was ASL throughout the maze. Everybody was using ASL to communicate because that's what they do in the film. And that was a nice touch, but for being A Quiet Place, it was still very loud. Bring your earplugs for all of these. But the monster was cool. The builds on the monster puppet was really cool, but it did kind of get a little repetitive after a while of like, oh, a monster, and then be quiet, and then a monster, and then be quiet, and then a monster. There wasn't a whole lot going on. But if you're a fan of the series and you want to see these really cool monsters, these really cool puppets, it's definitely worth going through. Next up, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. For being 116 out, I was kind of looking forward to going through a Frozen house, and it wasn't cold. But it was still really fun, and as a big fan of the Ghostbusters, you know, even if it's not the original Ghostbusters, just seeing the proton packs out, it's always a cool effect, and Slimer was there, and like, there's enough little nods that are really cute, and if you've seen the film or the film series, you're going to notice a lot of little Easter eggs throughout that are nice little nods to the franchise. This one I would say is worth it. I only got to go through it once because of the timing of the night, but I'm going to be going back in a few weeks, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting this one because I feel like this is one of those with so many little hidden things you should go through multiple times to really soak it all in. So this one was a lot of fun. Insidious: The Further. This is based on the Insidious franchise series of films, which I very much enjoy, and I got a lot of the references. I was going with a friend of mine who actually filmed most of these videos for me as I was taking photos, and she hadn't seen it, so our experiences differed, where I was really immersed and she didn't get it as much. But it was cool to see all the different monsters from the franchise, and you know, anytime you hear Tiptoe Through the Tulips, it's deeply unsettling. So this one was fun, but I guess you really have to be a fan of the franchise in order to really soak it up. Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines. This is not only the best maze of the year, this might be the best maze I've ever seen. The Bride of Frankenstein Lives has been my favorite maze for years, because it was just like, it's such a cool story, and the way they unfold a story, even just walking through a maze, is like, it was so well done, and it was so cool, and Slash does the music for it, so it just feels right, feels like a monster movie. That has been my favorite. That one really wowed me from several years ago, and this one now actually I think might take the cake. The way, so it's the Van Helsing, I can't remember her name, but the Van Helsing daughter is avenging the murder of her brother by Dracula's bride, so she needs to team up with the Bride of Frankenstein to go hunt Dracula's brides, and then the she-wolf pops out, and Anaxunamun, the mummy, and like, it's really cool the way they unfold it all, and some of the effects. There's a beheading at one point, is really, really well done. But this is one where the heat was a definite factor, because we went through early in the night. It was one of our initial mazes that we got to go through with the lights on. And then I wanted to go back through again to see it in the proper lighting conditions, and we had considerably fewer scarers at their position. Now, that could just be because they were doing a switch out or something, and that's fine, but from that point on in the night, every maze we went on had a lot of positions that were empty, and it's just because it was so hot, and these performers are doing it, like, I'm sweating and I'm wearing a t-shirt, and these performers are in there for an hour at a time in latex, in makeup, in these big costumes, and giving it their all. And they really, even as hot as it was, the people who were in the maze were just killing it, no pun intended. They were giving it everything they got, and so major respect goes out to them, the performers who put up with that heat to get through and give us a really great night. But you know, on days like this, you can't ever predict the weather, but if you just happen to have tickets on a day when it's going to be this hot, you know, usually I say go early and get through it just for the line's sake. But with this one, it's like go early before everybody starts dropping off, because it's too hot. It hit us really hard. Even when I left at 1 o'clock, it was still 90 degrees out. So it was hot all night. There's nothing you can do about it. But we got to go through and see this maze in its prime. We actually went through at the same time as Slash. So that was really cool. He did the music for the maze, and it was perfect. And so going through that was just like a little cherry on top for how much I enjoyed this maze. I can't say enough good things. If you're only going to do, you know, if you only have time to do a few, this needs to be at the top of your list. This is the best one in the event, and the best one for several years. Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Legacy of Leatherface. I've seen the films, and I'm, you know, so I get some of the references and stuff, but I think a lot of what they were doing, which is something John Murdy was talking about, is inventing a new story behind it, of going into the slaughterhouse where they worked and stuff. But then you get enough of Leatherface and Grandpa and all the characters that, you know, they kind of bring it back in to tie it all together with this, the legacy of Leatherface, you know, for many generations of that family. So it was cool, and they used a lot of smell effects in there, but it wasn't overpowering, which I heard at team member preview night it was really, really strong, so they turned it down and they made it a lot more palatable. Monstros II: The Nightmares of Latin America. I'm actually wearing the shirt from last year. This was my favorite maze of last year, was Monstros, and it's the Latin American folklore monsters. And this year was good. The kills, I think, weren't as creative. There was nothing that really blew my socks off, but this one was scarier. Like, there's just, you can't, El Cucuy is just scary. Like, these monsters are not like, ooh, that's fun and cool creature. This one is like, it's just primal and scary, and like the idea of stealing a baby and stuffing him in a sack and stuff, like, it's just deeply terrifying. So this was a much scarier, both psychologically and in the maze, a much scarier maze than it was last year. And if you're gonna, like, this should definitely be on your list of ones to hit. but I still don't think it quite lived up to what it had last year. Last year might have been just a hair better. Dead Exposure, Death Valley. This is another original maze they did. It's a research station gone wrong, and there's a bunch of irradiated zombies and stuff. I went through this one with the lights on to film, and even while I was in there, I was like, I'm doing a disservice to this maze by making it this bright, because the way they use the green glow and the black light effects and everything, it's so cool to see it the way it's intended with the lighting that they did. It's a really fun lighting effects maze, and you know, it seems kind of straightforward, of like, it's just a research station, so there's like you know, the chimps and stuff that they're experimenting on, and a gorilla that goes haywire, and then radioactive zombies and all this, but it really, the way they tie it together makes it more than cut and dry, you know, research station maze. It makes it more of a spectacle. And there's a couple of rooms. There's one room where everything is on fire, and it's just so impressive to see these lighting effects, the projection effects, the way they draw your gaze so to plan for the scare. This one's really well done. I think this is probably my number 2 maze. And so if you're gonna, you know, prioritize them, Monsters, and then this one is definitely not to be missed. And this one, I would say, probably wait until a little bit later in the night when it gets darker, because you really want to see the lighting effects perfectly. You don't want to be there while it's still light out, because it's going to throw everything off. And then finally, last maze is Terror Tram, Enter the Blumhouse. The Terror Tram is always kind of the same, except this year they had little vignettes from some of the Blumhouse movies. So they had Megan, they had Happy Death Day, The Purge, of course, where the plane went down. And it's fine. Like, it's kind of a known commodity at this point. The Terror Tram is the same layout and the same thing every year. I went on it, but if I skipped it, like, I would not have really batted an eye. I think when they incorporate some of the other stuff with, like, Hollywood Harry and tying it to an original haunt idea, I think is a little bit better, just because it's more fun for the story of it and they have a little more leeway. This one was just a bunch of vignettes of Megan, and like, even if you really like the films, like, it doesn't do it justice if you want a full maze of Megan, and if you don't really want a full maze of Megan, then you don't really want to be here. So I don't know, it just seems kind of haphazardly thrown together. This is one I would say skip, because it's also a larger time commitment to wait in line, get on the tram, be bussed over there, get off, walk through, wait for the tram, get back on, and then go back, and you're waiting for each of the vehicles to go through. It's a long time commitment. So if you're going to skip one, this is probably a skippable one. I'm not going to touch too much on the scare zones. They were fine. The Murder of Crows was really cool, but the rest of them were only okay. The Murder of Crows is they just gave a full official scare zone to those cool crow stilt walkers, and that was kind of nice. But the rest of them were just regular scare zones, nothing huge to report, nothing super fun. But the chainsaw chase out at the end of the night, right there on the main drag, is always fun. So if you're still around towards park closing, I think it's like the last half hour or something, all the best chainsaw wielders are all lined up right there by the gate, and they chase you out of the park, and it's always a really fun time. It's just a classic of the event. So that's one not to be missed. So far as the shows, we saw Late Night with Chucky, which was fine, and I see how it could have been fun. I think maybe we didn't have a great audience, but it just kind of happened really fast and it was over. And I wasn't particularly taken by it. Chucky brings people in and answers audience questions, but the guy who was performing as Chucky, I guess, just didn't have a lot of the jokes. Nothing really landed and just kind of ended.
Leo wants to know, who is your favorite Baywatch babe? Leo! Stupid question. Next. Oh, yes, right away. Okay. Corey, no, Wilma.
So I see how it could be good, like it's a fun format, but I think it's gonna depend on who the performer is. And then the other one is The Purge Dangerous Waters, which I didn't see this year, but I did see last year, and it was really, really cool. It's in the Waterworld stage. Everything blows up. It's, you know, they're going to take down society and do the purge and everything, but they have this huge place to do a stunt show in. So that was really cool, and it lends itself to the Purge. I really enjoyed that, and not that I want to see Waterworld go anywhere, but it's nice to see something new in that space. You know. So in summation, and if you've jumped down to this time code, here's a spoiler-free review. It was a great year. I honestly did not have super high hopes for this year's event. I thought it was going to be a little lackluster, but I was wrong. This is a great year. I had an awesome time. You know, this is not a year to miss. If you're gonna look at which houses are best, Universal Monsters is top tier, one of the best mazes. It's the best maze of this year and one of the best mazes in a long time. Number 2, I guess, it'd be Death Valley and maybe Monstros. You can skip the Terror Tram, you can maybe skip the Weekend. You know, they're just a little bit less than, but if you have the ability to see everything, it's a great time. Good to see the entire thing all at once. Thank you to Universal Studios for bringing me out, and thank you to my friend Kate for filming all these great videos. I have a lot of stuff on the channel that's going to be going up over the next month and a half as we do all this Halloween stuff. I'm going to be doing all the theme parks. I'm going to be doing several smaller events and private haunts and stuff as well. I got videos from these mazes that are going to be going up. I don't want to upload the full thing because, you know, I want you to come and see it yourself. But if you do want to see them, I'm sure they're out there, so go look for them. But I'm going to have snippets, and then as more events open up, I'm going to be doing comparisons back and forth between this and Knott's and Six Flags and Legoland and maybe SeaWorld and, you know, all of these different things that I'm going to be covering. So hopefully as the season goes on, I'll be able to give advice on if you're only going to go to one event, if you're only in town in LA for a little while, which one is going to be your night. So as of right now, because this is the only one that's open for the next week or so, this is it. And then I've got Six Flags is coming up next, and then Knott's Scary Farm, and then Legoland. So we'll see them progressing. If you guys want to see all of that throughout the Halloween season, make sure you subscribe to the channel and check out everything else I've got up already. Thanks so much for stopping by. We'll see you next time.